Hi, my name is Dr. Melissa Estevillo. I'm a licensed psychologist here at Biltmore Psychology and Counseling. So we have been answering some questions recently about couples counseling, some of the basics that people might have some concerns about, or ways to approach their spouse about this. So today what we wanted to answer is this question. What should I expect at my first couples counseling session? So first off, if you've never done couples counseling, if you've never done individual counseling, I can totally empathize and understand where it can feel pretty daunting. You don't know if you're going to have to immediately jump into stuff that's really painful. You don't know if it's going to be something where you're feeling like you're having to defend yourself. So we wanted to quiet some of those fears and just give you kind of a basic layout of what it should look like so that hopefully it feels inviting and doesn't feel as daunting. So one of the first things that we'll do is meet together as a couple. So there might be a place like session 2, session 3, session 4, where we decide to say, hey, let's divide you guys up for a session so that we could get individually a little bit more in-depth history about your childhood or about things that would just not fit into the 50-minute session that we typically would do together. But the vast majority of the time, you're going to present for couples counseling together as a couple. During the session, the goal will be to address some of the history of distress. What have been some of the themes that have led to some arguments? What are some places in which you've really gotten tripped up as a couple that have been kind of hard? Sometimes I think it's hard to jump into some of the depth right away, and so that's okay. It's okay to kind of talk in more generalities, saying we're arguing about parenting, or arguing about our intimacy and sexual connection, arguing about those kinds of things. But I think, again, it's important to know, hey, we're going to highlight some of the places where things have been rough over the past years or period of time. Another thing that we'll touch on along the way is, what are your goals for therapy? So sometimes couples will go, I have no idea. I have no idea what my goals are. You tell me. And there's certainly a place for a therapist to say, you know, based on some of the things that you've talked about, these would be some of the goals that I would propose that we try to conquer and try to do. But again, there's that place for feedback to say, you propose some goals, client can give you some feedback of whether or not that's a good goal or not, and together be able to come to a conclusion. I definitely have some people that come in and they have it all written out. They're like, these are the exact things that I want to be able to accomplish, and that's great too. Again, as long as we're able to decide as a couple, then we'll be able to proceed forward from there. One of the questions that I get associated with that is, what if we don't have the same goals? What if someone's coming in saying, hey, we have had a lot of stress, but I want to work on this relationship. This is what we're fighting for. This matters. And someone else is a little bit ambivalent. They're like, I don't really know. I don't really know what I want to do next. In my opinion, in those moments, that is the time to say, well, the goal of counseling is to help that person be able to decide where they're at. If they're able to see some hope that the relationship could heal, that they could feel like a healthy, whole, happy person within the relationship, then they might then later say, like, yeah, my goal is to work on this. This is what I want to do. If along the pathway they go, you know, we're really trying. This has been, you know, a rewarding relationship in parts, but other parts, you know, it just feels like we're hurting each other. Then again, that might be the goal of counseling, is to be able to talk through some of those things and to potentially find a place where, you know, the couple is able to separate amicably and as peacefully and lovingly as possible. So from that goal list, the therapist is able to create a treatment plan where they're able to sit down and say, okay, so based on what your goals are, based on some of the history that I've heard, this is generally the way I would see us approaching this. And so they might not be able to give you like specifics of like every session we're going to do this, this, and this, but give you an overarching view of, hey, this is the way we're going to approach things. This is the way I think that we could go about treating some of the anxiety that's within the relationship, or this is the way I think that we can propose healing some of the trust that has been broken or breached over time. And so in the first session, there should be a general sense of, you felt heard, you felt understood, you felt like that person was able to advocate for you. Again, another kind of subtopic is the fact that the role of a good therapist is not to take sides with one person, but is to advocate for the relationship together, again, based on these proposed goals. And so that person should really feel like, hey, my therapist was advocating for me. They understood me. They were also advocating for the other person, so this wasn't a one-sided thing. And they should have just a general sense that this person knows how to get us out of this, you know, problematic spot that we're in. So I think, again, it's important that the couple walks away with a sense of hope, that whatever that pathway is going to be, whatever direction is defined, that there is a path to be able to get there, and that it's not necessarily going to be a miserable process to go through all of this. So some common questions that we also get that couples will ask about the first session is, Are you going to tell me that I'm incompatible with my spouse or partner? Are you going to tell me that divorce is the only option? And so to that, I would say most assuredly no. The goal of the therapist is not to say like, hey, I think that this is just too hard. I'm going to decide that for you. You shouldn't stay together. You shouldn't go forward. That is not something that should take place. So I think a therapist might highlight some of the parts that are hard, but again, you're coming in saying, I want help with that, and so their role is to help you through that. So I think that that's probably the most common question that I get, is people being concerned, are you just going to tell me that I should call it quits and that there's actually no hope? And that should not be the case. Another question that we'll get is, what are some good tips to be able to have a good first session? And honestly, I don't know that it's necessarily being super prepared or having a ton of conversations with your spouse or partner before. I think the biggest thing is just knowing, okay, I need to, when appropriate, when that therapist has earned the right to hear my story, I need to know that I need to be able to be vulnerable, to talk about some of the places that have been embarrassing, that have been hurtful, that have been distressing. So I don't know that people from the very first session always feel comfortable enough to totally kind of relax and lower their guard and trust the therapist. But I think it's important to think like, that's a place that I should probably get to, so that I can find that place to be able to connect and potentially, heal the relationship if that's the goal. So as always, we love questions like this, and we'd love for you to always send us over more so we can answer them for future. Thank you.